And we are back after a month of no podcasting. We've been busy. We've been busy little beavers with holiday plans and a bunch of other things, and even some D&D. Welcome back to the Sage's Nook.
We're
I'm
fucking
Tom.
back, baby. Let's go.
We're back. This is my brother Mitch. We are both longtime DMs here to talk about anything and everything D&D. I believe this is episode 6 after a brief hiatus. We're back and better than ever. It's Sunday afternoon. We're drinking some beer. I got some Guinness. I got some Guinness in the Guinness glass.
Represent. Deutschland.
Mitch has got his Deutschland giant chalice. We're ready to get into it.
Got it from the German market in Chicago.
There you go. We hope everyone's holidays were good. And we're back to start the new year with more D&D. And contrary to what the past few episodes have been, we've actually played a good amount of D&D. Well, we've done a lot with D&D. Maybe we haven't played a lot, but we're gearing up for a lot of stuff.
I think I've ran 1 or 2 sessions of D&D since we last had a podcast. So not a lot for me, but more so for you.
Yeah, I ran a session. I've played a couple sessions. I've gotten around in a D&D sense. I finally have picked up our Curse of Strahd campaign. That's been on a hiatus for like a year and a half. The backstory there, I tried to run a Curse of Strahd campaign with the party that I play with in person while we were running our main homebrew campaign. And I just couldn't do it. It was too much. So I said, guys, we're going to put Curse of Strahd on hold. We're going to finish our homebrew campaign, and then we're going to start Curse of Strahd again. Well, we finished our homebrew campaign in November, took December off for the holidays and a million other things. And now we're back. But you might notice I'm in a completely different area. I bought a house. That's one of the reasons that that's one of the reasons why we didn't do the podcast for a couple weeks, is because I was moving and closing and doing all of the stressful things that come with that. And instead of my super awesome, beautifully decorated little game room, I'm now in an unfinished basement. But that's going to change.
Yeah, we've had some major life changes recently. He bought a house, officially like moved into official house with his fiance, and everything's going great over there. I bought a Deutschland mug. Big life changes, lots of things going on.
Big steps.
Big steps for
on
both of
our
us.
parts.
Yeah, for both of us.
We're also using a new mic setup. Mitch has gotten a new mic. We've gotten a couple new things to hopefully enhance the podcast, but we're working out the kinks. So if there's any audio issues, we will work to fix those. We're currently just new setup. Setup comes with some growing pains.
If shit's fucked up, like, go fuck yourself. I don't give a shit. Sorry.
Just get through it, and it'll be better next time.
Yeah.
It might be perfect. It might be perfect anyways. Either way. So, but yeah, let's talk about some D&D. I started Strahd up, and boy, oh boy, was it a session to remember, because halfway through the session, I got food poisoning.
Let's go. Strahd
it was awesome.
You in real life.
And by awesome, I mean it was terrible. I'd been on a little bit of a Subway kick in our chaos of moving everything from our apartment to our house.
Dude.
Because Subway's running insane deals. They're running like insane Christmas deals where like they essentially, with all the discounts and stuff that they're running, we're back in 2002 with the $5 footlong. And I was like, dude, $5 for a 12-inch Subway sandwich. How can I go wrong with that? So I ate a lot of Subway in December. And one day at work, I grabbed a Subway sandwich and I was like, something tastes a little off about this. Anyways.
Dude, do you know how many videos I've seen of the Subway sandwich workers falling asleep on the sandwiches? Do you think that they are storing that shit correctly? Fuck no. That's like a gamble with your life to go get a Subway footlong.
It destroyed me. I have not been that violently ill in a long time. So we were playing D&D. I get home from, we play D&D on Thursdays, and I get home from work and I have like a half hour to get everything ready. So I was like, man, I was talking to my fiance because she's in this campaign too. I was like, man, I don't feel very good. Like my stomach's really heavy. I think I might have to like shit or something. But anyways, I was like, yeah, whatever. So I was like, I'll get over it. Everyone got there. Like, I was like, guys, just so you know, like my stomach's a little upset. I feel fine otherwise, but might be a little sluggish this session. They're like, oh, that's fine. So I get in. I'm reading like a 6-page recap because it's been a year since we were in the campaign. I'm like, sneaking burps in between everything. And then halfway through the session, probably like an hour, hour and a half in, they're about to fight. And I was like, hey guys, I'll be right back. Something's happening. They're like, okay, Tom, good luck. So I fucking ran up to the bathroom. I was like, okay, time for a big poop. It was not a big poop. It was a big throw up. I walked into that bathroom. I got the sensation in like my throat and my mouth. And I was like, and it was violent. It was violent and terrible. And then after that, I got like, you know, when you throw up, you get like the post throw up adrenaline where you're like, oh my God, I feel great.
Yeah.
Like I've expelled the evil. It's done. That's exactly what I was like. I was like, I feel great. I guess that's just what I needed to do. I just needed to throw up my sandwich. So I came back downstairs. I was like, guys, I threw up my sandwich. I feel so much better. Let's get going. So then we started combat and everything was happening. It was intense. And then probably like 10 minutes after that, the adrenaline faded. And I was like, oh, I started getting like, my face was like bright white. My body was starting to shake. And I was like, oh, it's not over. It's just beginning.
Yeah, you ate some bad fucking food. What
Yeah,
what sandwich was it? What sandwich was it?
It was a cold cut combo. Cold cut combo with everything on it.
The classic killed you.
I know. It betrayed me. But yeah, we had to end the session early. We ended combat, and right after that, I was like, guys, I'm sorry. You all need to go home. Like something bad's happening. And yeah, I was bedridden and violently ill for the next day and a half.
Yeah, that's not good.
So that's the last time I trust Subway. And that's how my first session back was. I was so excited. I did so much prep for it, and then I ended up being sick for half of it. I barely remember any of it because I was just fighting for my fucking life. But we're gonna play again this Thursday. Hopefully, I won't get food poisoning. I'm not gonna eat Subway before the session this time. That's for sure.
There you go. No Subway, dude. Subway is a gamble every time. The
Yeah.
Subway has gone so downhill in like the past 10 years. I remember when we were younger, we would get Subway pretty often. Like we went because it was healthier. It was healthier than the other fast food options. You'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go get Subway. I think they just over franchised themselves, and then they're all run like shit now. So like it's way lower quality.
Yeah, it betrayed me because, like I said, that was probably like the 15th Subway I've had in the past like month. So I was like, yeah, you know, it is what it is. It's fine. And it's funny because at work I was talking up Subway and I was like, yeah, I got Subway. Subway's awesome. And someone was like, dude, Subway's like bad. You should not be eating that. And I was like, no, deals are good and it's, you know, it's mildly healthy for fast food. And that night it betrayed me. It said, yeah, you thought, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It was bad.
I was
but we're back.
Yeah, I was a Subway fanboy for forever. And then you know, I kind of slowly started switching to Jimmy John's. And, you know, I'm full on Jimmy John's now.
No, I mean, Jimmy John's is a superior food chain. They're, you know, I'm not a huge fan of Jimmy John's because they're the guy, their CEO is like a big game hunter and stuff, and he does a lot of unethical stuff out of the country. But that's a whole other conversation that we don't have to get into. But Jimmy John's is a superior food chain. Their subs are better.
Yeah, they're more expensive though.
Oh yeah,
they're like double the price
for good reason. Dude, Jimmy John's hits every time you eat Jimmy John's. You're like, oh,
it's great. Yeah.
Anyways, that's not D&D related. But yeah, I had food poisoning. That was my session back, and it fucking ruined everything.
Yeah, this episode we're going to be talking about how to run your own fast food restaurant in a D&D game as the premise for the campaign. What you're going to want to do is find a store that's into town already, murder the people who are running it, take it over, switch it into a Subway, poison all of the civilians in the town, and then you can steal all their money.
That's the murder hobo way. That's the high fantasy that we all want to play is basically just simulating Overcooked.
It's the
in a D&D session.
Yes, it's it's actually the CEO gameplay loop for D&D. Poison everybody, but then they have to rely on your product, and then you just make money off them.
Classic. But yeah, that was Curse of Strahd. Mitch, you ran some D&D for us.
I did. I ran a session of my in-person game, which we'll talk about that later, and then I ran a session for you and some of our other friends online. The Deep Set Railway.
Yeah, it was cool.
If any of you are in our Discord and you, because I'm gonna run the session again, maybe skip like the next 20 minutes of the pod because we're gonna probably talk about it.
20 minutes.
I don't know. Essentially, I mean, dude, we fucking ramble. We ramble all the time. We'll just go on about this shit for 20, 30 minutes, whatever. So the setting was, you know, they're playing the same characters in our guild kind of Discord campaign setting, and it's basically like a train, like murder mystery heist. They had to go on there. They have to talk to people, and they're trying to find out who done it. There's a murder, blah 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 blah. But it was cool. It was cool. We only got about halfway done with the session. Took a little longer than I thought, but it's definitely one of the more
Unconventional.
yeah, unconventional. Like each cable car is like a different scene. Like there's different people, and they can split up and go to separate cable cars.
It's like the movie Bullet Train.
Yeah, yeah, it's like Bullet Train, but maybe a little bit like more fancy rather than actiony. But yeah, it was cool. It was fun. Train's conducted by a bunch of gnomes. they all wear little red hats and stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah,
it was good.
cool.
It was good.
That was a cool little session. A lot of role play, a lot of like mystery, not necessarily espionage, but like very kind of, Murder on the Orient Express type, just got to kind of interview people, try and
Yeah.
understand where everyone's coming from.
So
Maybe
yeah,
something erupts into a fight in a secret car or something.
their party is actually there as like a hit job, but then someone else is murdered on the train while they're there. So they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And they haven't figured that out yet because they're still on the train. We haven't finished the session. About halfway.
Yeah. And what else? I'm starting a new campaign. That's going to be fun. Little online thing. Just taking a couple. Well, Mitch, of course. Mitch is always in every campaign I run. And taking Mitch, a couple of guys that I don't get to run with a whole lot. And we're kind of making a little bit of a dark fantasy campaign. A little bit grittier, a little bit more grounded. Take the classic like high fantasy of like, Vox Machina. You kind of turn it down a notch to like The Witcher or Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. So it's still like medieval fantasy. It's just a little bit more grounded, a little bit slower paced from a leveling perspective, but it makes for more intense combat, more intense character arcs, things like that when everything's just a little bit less just crazy.
Oh yeah, and your boy's coming in with his Death Knight fantasy, World of Warcraft fantasy, Frost DK playing the Blade Lock Paladin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's going to be fucking awesome. I'm creating a whole new map. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm taking my world, because I have this big world that we've spent, half a decade now just playing in and building up lore and creating a million different things for between me and all my players and everything. But there was a portion of my last campaign that we got really high level. And we spent probably a good 3-4 months in like the upper echelon of like level 16 to 20 gameplay. And that just about killed me. I don't know if I can do that again for a long time. The high level play of D&D is pure chaos, especially when you're working with full casters. Mitch learned that the hard way. Oh, you ran a one shot. You ran our wizard one shot.
I forgot about that. Yes, I've blocked it from my memory.
Yeah, well, no. We'll talk about that in just a little bit as I finish this thought. But yeah, so essentially what I'm doing is I'm creating an event. And I've heard, as I tell people this, they're like, oh, it's the spell plague. I honestly don't know what the spell plague is. I know it's a thing in like canon D&D lore, but I don't know what the mechanics are of it. But yeah, something comes, an aberration called the Weave Eater comes out, completely fractures the arcane weave, and now magic is like turned down really low. So it still exists. It still exists, and you can still play your caster if you want to, but like there's no like giant high sorcerers that can just like blow up cities or anything anymore. It's all very grounded.
Yes.
It's more like think of casters like Gandalf,
There's like one
He
dude
has
who just
magic.
runs around and that's it.
Yeah.
Like he's very rare.
He's got magic, but he uses it very sparingly, and his magic isn't gonna like break the game.
True.
But yeah, it's cool.
It reserves
I'm fucking cooking right now.
reserves the high power for the players. There is one thing though that could be a little bit harder for the DM in a game like that is once the players kind of do get those high powers, like if they start to level up, like in the 10s, 15s, who's gonna stop them besides monsters? Those players want, those kingdoms can't really do much against them, if there's no contingencies, so as a DM, it would, like once your players get to that high level, they can kind of just rule.
I mean, it's one of those things of like in this kind of I'm hesitant to say grimdark because it's not like a grimdark campaign.
No.
But the mechanics of it are going to be reminiscent of that. If you've ever heard of there's a campaign setting called Grim Hollow, which I really like. I have all the source books, at least from the old, well, I guess the old version of D&D, the pre-2024 version.
What should we just call it 6th edition just to make it easy, or
no,
5.5?
because it's not. It's the same game. It's the same shit as 5e. It's just updated
Just
to be better.
patched. Yeah,
And it is better. If you think it's not better, you're wrong. But anyways,
it is
we
way
don't got to
better.
get into that.
The only
But
the only reason it's not better is they just don't have all the content out yet. That's the only thing you could say.
yeah,
Like, oh, well, I can't play this type of subclass. It's like, well, they'll get it out eventually, or you just make it work with the old rules. Who cares?
yeah. But in that campaign setting, the mechanics are a lot grittier. Rests take longer. There's mechanics for like grievous wounds and stuff like that. That's what I'm going to implement here. And that level 10 kind of tier of play, like you were saying, Mitch, that is the end game. Like you're not going to level 20 in a grimdark campaign where you can warp reality. That level 10 tier of play where you're just a good warrior, a very skilled warrior, and you have a lot of power, that's the end game. So it's like, yeah, everything's just kind of brought back to basics.
I
It
like that.
makes it,
I
sometimes it just gets a little too crazy with high level, in
I
my opinion.
I would say, like, I know we've talked about this off the podcast, but when we were discussing Tom's new setting, like it's in his campaign setting, but it's like a new area. But so it's kind of like a refresh. Like we talked about this when we were talking about magic items a couple weeks ago too. Is there's not enough like little boosts in D&D. You know what I mean? Like little magic items, like oh you've gotten half a level, you can take like +1 to a stat or like a low level feat or something like that. It's always just like, okay, you're the next level. You're way more powerful now. Or okay, you've gotten this insanely powerful magic item now. Okay. Like I don't there's that's one thing I have a problem with the attunement system too, is most of the items are attunement even if they're weaker. So I'm just going to be waiting for that giant powerful magic item because I don't want to use all these other things because my other items are stronger. So I don't know. That's just the problems I have. And I think with a kind of lower magic, grittier game where there's more rewards that are smaller and then it extends the levels. So basically 1 to 10 should take like 1 to 20 time. I feel like that would be more rewarding overall.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. And like you just said, those tiny stat increases mean so much more when you're not trying to get to level 20. When everything is less powerful, a stat increase of 1 could make a big difference. Or like increasing your speed by 5 feet could make a big difference. When combat is so gritty and tactical, little boosts like that could make all the difference for you in the heat of the moment. And also, it increases the stakes. It allows the players' characters to have more stakes in the story at a lower level because in classic high fantasy, when you have these mages at the top of the hierarchy of cities and stuff, when you have these high mages and kings and all this stuff that are super powerful, it's like, oh, a dragon attacked the city. These level 5 characters, they're not making a difference. There's a guy that can blow up the world in the high tower right
Oh,
now.
we'll just go hide
So
in the
it's
barracks while the archmage goes and 1v1s the
yeah,
dragon.
it's
We'll just
it's like
distract
one of
it.
those things. It's like, okay, you guys are tasked with killing the dragon. Why? There are so many people here that are more equipped to do this than the party. But when it's a dark fantasy or low fantasy campaign and you're level 5, you are a lot more equipped to actually help out because that high mage that can blow up the world doesn't exist.
Yeah, he's
So
probably
it's
like
like,
a
oh,
level
okay.
3 spellcaster or something.
Yeah,
There's like a core
exactly.
wizard.
So it makes more sense on a stakes level of like, hey, we're not the most powerful guys here, but we're kind of all they have right now. We have to team up with the other powerful people because it makes sense. Because everyone's on a kind of the bar has been lowered for power,
Yeah.
which I really like, and I think it's going to be really refreshing to kind of take a step back and just focus more on like the gritty RP, combat, like actual like martial combat. Not that casters aren't going to be in the world, but like sometimes, when you're getting high level fighters, they don't really get more powers. They just get more of what they already had.
They're just deadlier.
Yeah. So it's like, cool. The mage is summoning a meteor storm and the fighter's doing the same thing he's been doing all game. He's just doing it 8 times now. So,
And guess what? Those 8 attacks are going to do more damage than that fucking meteor. Just turn into a
yeah, but
blender.
it just kind of like balances everything a little bit more in my opinion. High level D&D is so hard to balance from a DM's perspective when you've got this party that can literally just do whatever they want. And you're like, okay, I need to give them a satisfying encounter. usually it's way too powerful for them and they die, or they just steamroll it. And Mitch, you actually have some experience in this recently with our one shot.
Yes.
This fucker ran a one shot where we were all wizards.
Yeah, so I was inspired about probably like a year and a half ago to run a wizard one shot because the dungeon dudes had made a video of what if everyone plays a wizard. I was like, that sounds awesome. I'm gonna run a one shot like the Power Rangers, where the Council of the Magi get together, and the central tree of the world, basically is their leader. It's the world tree, Vidki. He's got a big old smiling face on the side of his tree husk, and he's colossal, and he's like the leader of their group. They're all wizards. I just said you can choose druid, wizard, sorcerer, warlock, whatever spellcaster you want to play.
Full caster.
Yeah, whatever caster you want to play, you can play it, and you're a part of this council for this like 2 or 3 shot game. And so it's cool. Everyone made like a powerful wizard that's like based in the lore. It's 11th level, so like you're a pretty well-known figure in the world, and you're like the council of wizards for the planet or like this continent. So it's like the stakes are high. You are the team that gets called into action when things are going down. So
you're getting a phone call.
Yeah, I am. Sorry about that. But yeah, so they kind of come together as just guild of wizards, the council of the Magi, and they're sent off to do some shit. So they're the strongest of the strong in my world canon, kind of, for like spellcasters. And they go on this whole mission. They meet with a bunch of frogs. The frogs kind of give them a task, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the task we're coming for. This tree's getting corrupted, the other world tree. We need to go figure out what the problem is. So basically, in the session, there's 4 dudes, all full casters. A Nightwalker gets summoned to fight them, and they all fight a Nightwalker. And as Tom said, the folly of one big guy.
Yeah, we absolutely decimated him. One of our mages had a psychic lance and just started spamming it at him. One of our guys banished the mobs. We were just too powerful. I was hasted. I was a Bladesinger wizard, Warforged Bladesinger wizard with a belt of Frost Giant strength, I think. So my strength was like a 25. So I was a wizard, but I was also just this wrecking machine of a pure strength. It was awesome. We were cool. A team of wizards. It was one of the Nightwalker fight was just kind of not necessarily like a dud, because it was still fun, but it didn't go the way you thought it was going to go.
No. So it was fine at first, because this Nightwalker was edited a little, and there were some other mechanics that were weakening the Nightwalker, because they were only 4 11th level characters. So I didn't want to just outright kill them. I wanted it to be a good fight. The Nightwalker had increased health, but there was mages around the map that they could kill, and it would hurt the Nightwalker as well. Basically stat like health sponges. And then when I was making the creature, I forgot to give it legendary resistances. And I was not going to make that shit up on the fly, because we don't cheat. We're not cheating DMs. And yeah, so he got banished, which was fine, because he got banished to the crystal he walked out of 10 minutes ago. Or 10 seconds ago. So I knew he was coming back no matter what. He's just going to walk back out of the crystal, or the banishment is going to drop. Banishment. So they killed all the wizards, and then they had a surprise round on him, and I'm like, all right, they just did a bunch of damage, but now it's time. It's time for him to fight him. And, Psychic Lance, I think is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Rolitham's Psychic Lance or something like that.
Yeah, so basically... the Nightwalker is immune to like all status conditions except for incapacitated. And Psychic Lance incapacitates you for a whole round. And it does it until the end of the next person, the caster's turn. So since it's a 4th level spell, and they're 11th level spellcasters, one of the wizards has like 5 spell slots to be able to use this for 5 rounds in a row. It's a intelligence save of 22 that the Nightwalker has to make. I think he has a +1 or a +3, something like that. So he failed 5 turns in a row, and they were just unloading all their spells on him over and over again, and he died. So, it was cool. Pretty lame. I didn't get to use my big monster I'd hyped up. I had a whole cool playlist. Like, when he walked into the room out of the crystal, they were all kind of scared, and I started playing classical music.
Yeah.
It was cool. And, in the moment, I was like, wow, this is such a big letdown. But they still had fun, I think. So
I mean, sometimes that just happens. Sometimes it's like I said, high level D&D, especially when you're dealing with casters, is extremely hard to prepare for. But there was a fight before that where we were like, we essentially like got on this giant frog and he like jumped us across the map. He like Hulk jumped. So we were just like flying through the air on its back. There was like this dragon that was fighting us while we were flying through the air. That was really cool. That was like probably one of the coolest D&D encounters I've ever played in, because like we were in the air flying, so like there was like trajectory mechanics and stuff. Like if you flew off, you would just start falling back. And my guy had the ability to like he had the ability to misty step and stuff, and when he would go into his blade song, he'd get buffed. So just the way that I was playing it, I was just like jumping off the frog and jumping off or
He's
jumping onto the dragon and like
he's basically anime protagonist. Like that's
yeah.
basically.
It's very anime.
He's got a long
like
a long sword that electrifies, and he's like dashing around, jumping in between things while in the air,
Yeah.
skydiving.
Everyone else was like a very like traditional caster, you know, low strength, just kind of meant to stay in the back and just blast. But I was like the tank of the group, even though I was a wizard, because I was a warforged and I could go into my blade song and like increase my AC and all this stuff. So I was the one like running around the map and like jumping off the frog and latching onto the dragon and like slashing it and everything.
Imagine him like Atom Smasher. That's kind of what he was like. Atom Smasher from Cyberpunk. Except he has a big sword rather than giant guns and shit.
Yeah, it was cool. I really like that. He's probably my favorite character. I think I've actually even talked about him on this podcast before. He's just like this. He was an elf that the one thing that could kill him, because elves, you know, basically live forever. Technically not, but basically the one he got ill and he was like, fuck, I'm gonna die. So he like transferred his consciousness to a automaton, and now he's this warforged wizard. So he's really cool.
Yeah.
That's a character that I really, really like. We were talking about how sometimes I have some trouble creating characters that I really connect with. That one is one of my favorite characters.
Mhm.
He's got a theme. He's got a heavy theme.
Heavy theme. Heavy theme, heavy idea, fun to play. It's all about fun. If you don't have fun playing your character and you just try to optimize the shit out of them, but you don't care about your character, you just want to win, go fuck yourself. You suck ass at the game. You're not going to have fun. You're going to, oh, I did 20,000 damage in one round. Okay, have fun sitting here for an hour while we're role playing and you have nothing to do.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a cool encounter. Super cool encounter, because there's a lot of like flight mechanics and, you know, just cool stuff. People were getting polymorphed. Me and one of my best friends, Noah, he was a druid. So he would like wild shape into a bird and I would like ride on him. It was cool. It was a cool encounter.
Yeah, it was fun.
Moving parts.
It was a really fun session. Definitely ran some weirder sessions this past like month, like more out there, but they were cool. Sometimes those creative sessions are some of my most fun ones to run. I love running like the weird high fantasy stuff where it's like crazy shit is going on and it's like there's like high stakes and just, again, heavy theme. That was a super high fantasy, high magic campaign session where there's a lot of shit going on. They're fighting a shadow dragon while they're riding a giant frog through the air who Hulk jumped to a tree. Like, it's just insane. Like, the whole session was supposed to be insanity. They get to this giant tree that's being, like, corrupted or it's turning sick to save it. It's one of the world trees. And, you know, there's a giant crystal in the middle. There's an evil sorcerer. There's 20 different evil sorcerers all summoning some shit in the middle. There's hook horrors running around. The tree's all purple. There's magic everywhere. It's just super heavy-handed theme. Makes the sessions better. It's all about the theme.
Speaking of theme, it's time for the fucking wisdom check. If you don't mind me cutting you off.
Wisdom engaged.
Wisdom engaged. All right. Well, we're about halfway through, so we're making good time here. Just want to make sure we don't ramble too much. But guess what? The GOAT, the greatest of all time, question submitter. Rafi Ayala, he's back. He's back and better than ever with a banger question. So let's read it. Me again. Currently, my party is adventuring in an underwater mechanical city ran by technopath squid aliens. Very creative.
Yeah, that's pretty normal.
Yeah, classic high fantasy. How do you guys give your settings personality? So this is a very open-ended question, and I do like it because of that. When you say settings, you could mean just your world in general, your cities, your towns, landmarks, the wilderness. What gives something personality? First and foremost, the vibe. the theme? What are, we've talked about theme a lot in previous
Mhm.
episodes, so I don't want to tread on old ground here, but I guess kind of next to that is vibe. What is this place supposed to convey? What's the aura that it's presenting, for lack of a better term? Do you want your players to feel scared and nervous when they come in here? Do you want them to have this sense of bewilderment? Like, for example, like when in Avatar, the Blue People movie, when they're flying through the floating islands, you're like, oh wow. You have this kind of bewildered feeling of what's the of majesty. It's
Mhm.
just these crazy landmarks that are completely not normal. Do you want the theme or the vibe to come from the setting specifically, or maybe it is just a regular forest but there's something terrible in it, lurking in it? And that's what the differentiator is. And I think, as I'm just kind of rambling on here, you need to have something that makes it different. Whether or not it's different as a whole or different from everything else around it, what is the thing that people should pay attention to when they're in your setting, city, forest, landmark? What's the one thing that's like, hey, this is what makes this? If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, I mean, let's think of any famous. Let's go to do cities like themes because he's talking about an underwater robotic city made of alien squid people. You know, um, let's think of a famous city and how it's recognizable. Gondor. You know, what makes that city stand out? Maybe the whole fucking design of it. Look at that shit.
Yeah.
It's carved into the side of the mountain out of marble. It's a like a pyramid almost structure that goes all the way up with the it's like it's cool. It's different. You know it's not a
Yeah.
normal city. You have to
Yeah.
think of
Nothing.
something that makes it stand out and then the whole theme of it just kind of sprouts from that. Like a cool city could be like, oh, there's a like one of my cities in my campaign setting where we were talking about Vitki, the giant tree. He's the world like the biggest world tree on the planet. There's a city underneath him that's like the golden city and it like lives in his roots and the tree kind of covers the whole city and protects it, so it fits a cool theme. When you're there, it's a vibe. You can always look up and you see the tree above you, or like little gold specks from the leaves fall down as you're walking around. Like it all sprouts from a single idea, and my idea was I wanted a giant tree to be the basis of the city. I also have a city in my campaign setting where it's called Clifftop. The whole thing in the city is it's on a mountain, like on a cliffside, cliff top, and the city's iconic because there's a giant gem in the central palace, and it radiates basically a force field around the city. Everything's well protected. It's iconic. It's known throughout the realms that there's a giant gem there that's super magical. It protects them from magical attacks, ranged attacks. So it's like the theme of that city is like it's very well fortified. It's hard to attack. It's just well known through the realm, and it kind of when your players are experiencing that and they look up, I think a lot of it comes from just looking up and looking around the city. It's the general vibe, like Tom said. You can always see the barrier, and if the barrier's down, something's wrong or whatever. I don't know where I'm
Yeah.
going with this, but
No, I mean you're on a perfect path here. I think to continue your thought bubble, it doesn't have to be the entire city as a whole, right? You don't have to be like, oh man, well, this city's supposed to be super important, so every shop has to be cool, every little street, everything has to be magical and set itself apart. No, not everything has to be different. There needs to be like a certain aspect or a certain one or two things that set this city apart. For Clifftop, it's the gem. The rest of the city's probably just like a regular kind of medieval city. It's got your shops, it's got your barracks, it's got all that stuff. But that gem makes everything in it a little different because this shop, it might be an ordinary shop, but it's protected by magic. These barracks might just be ordinary barracks, but they're protected by magic. Same thing with what's the example you just gave from the movie from Gondor. Everything in Gondor is just a human city, but it's all this beautiful white stone. I don't know if it's marble, but it's all white stone. And it's like this city that's kind of like stacked on top of itself rather than sprawling outward. There's nothing special about what's inside the city beyond like the landmark, the white tree. The white tree of Icthelion, I'm pretty sure. It's literally
It's on your shirt right now.
on my freaking hoodie, the tree of Gondor. That's the symbol of it, and that's all the way at the tippy top. So there doesn't have to be like everything about the city is special. You just need to have a couple things about the city that make everything special. If that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. And like even like just for general theme of a city to like heavy hand it, you just have to come up with a cool idea and then just base the town around it. So
Hmm.
like I mean I think that's more of what I was trying to get at with my other thing is when I'm making a city, I'll try to think of one or two really like defining features about it because like every city will have a defining feature. Like if you go to like ancient Egypt, the defining features were the Nile River and the giant fucking pyramids. So it's kind of like that's what makes it legendary or very iconic and heavy theme sprouts from that. Like if you have a
Hmm.
city that is known for its enormous ships and its ports. Okay, that's a port city. That's going to flesh out the rest of the city. It's going to be full of pirates. It's going to be full of sailors. There's going to be a ton of bars. Like all that stuff just comes from your central idea. And then it's going to feel heavy handed in the gameplay because it just writes itself for you.
Yeah. What purpose does the city serve? That's a good place to start. And we're not breaking new ground with this. I'm sure there's a million different YouTube channels that have said this first. Well, what purpose does your city serve? Build it around that. Yeah, but it's a little harder to put that into practice than it is to just, well, that's the answer. There you go. But like, on that note, what does the city mean? Like, for example, you look at the Matrix trilogy. There is one city. I can't even remember what it's called. Like the main city. Is it the Machine City? I don't know. But they have one hub where humanity is underground. There's nothing really special about that city. It's made of machinery and it's really, it's cool for the genre and for the whole kind of world building aspect, but there's no like particular landmarks in there. They got the underground caverns that they all party in and stuff, but like there's no one thing where you're like, whoa, that's the cool thing about the city, that's the one landmark about the city. No, the city is important because it's the only thing they have left. It's not this super powerful magical place that has all these cool things. The importance of the city, the relevance of the city comes from what it means. If the city falls, they're done. And that is the specific aspect of the city that makes it cool, that makes it important, is this is the last hub that they have. If
Yeah.
the Sentinels get in there, it's done,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So you can think about it
Everyone's
from a more.
yeah, everyone's in a sad state. Everyone's like scrounging for food or like struggling to survive. It feels very cold, but it feels very warm at the same time because it's the only place where the humans have to live. So they got to work together. But then again, they're in a cave. Like there's like it's sad, It's lonely. It's like a rough life.
So you can start thinking not maybe what are the physical features of it, but start thinking more of like a theoretical or just kind of like, you know,
What you
the
want to
word is a.
what you want the city to serve as.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be this insane place that's gonna bewilder your characters every time you walk into it. You can say, hey, this is important because it's the last city. There's nothing special about it, but the fact that it's the last one makes it special. And that will maybe even put more importance and emphasis on it to your players than any cool landmark ever could, where it gives that sense of this is the thing we need to protect at all costs. Not because there's a cool white tree there or a cool arena, but just because this is the only one they have left. So that when it comes to cities, there's a lot of ways you can look at it, but I think it just boils down to what do you think your players are going to find important, or just what do you find important about the city? I don't know.
There you go. Yeah. There's a couple routes you can go. You can go physical, you can go you know, what it means to the world and then just kind of the idea will sprout from there. Another way like let's take a look at the city he presented and then let's kind of flesh that out with only just the sentence he gave us. So, will you repeat that?
Currently, my party is adventuring in an underwater mechanical city ran by technopath squid aliens. So,
Technopath.
technopath, I'm guessing that's like they communicate electronically.
Yes,
That's
I would
my
assume
that's my
so.
guess of what that means. Technopath squid aliens. This is a pretty obscure thing. It's hard. I'm assuming, and this is, they, what they say about assuming, but may, it's hard to really, it's hard to really dive into this, because
Well, so it's hard to dive into it, as you said, pun intended. That I think the most relatable city to what this is like Atlantis or something. Like it's like a technopath squid civilization at the bottom of the ocean. There's a lot you could do with that, like just thematically. Let's say bottom of the ocean. That's where it's at. These guys are extremely advanced aliens. Well, now you got to kind of think of how did they get there? Did they crash land here? Are they just I that's one thing.
yeah,
Did they teleport there? I'm not really
what
sure, but they're there now, and they're at the bottom of the fucking ocean. That's just what I'm going with. That's gonna
yeah,
feel a
what
lot differently than a underwater city that's in a coral reef or like towards the surface. And let's go with bottom of the ocean. It's gonna be scary down there. There's giant aberrations and horrors at the bottom of the ocean in any D&D campaign world. Behemoth leviathans. Perhaps there's some sort of giant air bubble that keeps the monsters out, and their machinery has to stop, or their machinery is the only thing keeping them alive, and it's dying. And then, if this machinery is dying, then the whole city is saddened and in like a kind of scared state. If the city's prospering and flourishing, it's going to feel much more uplifting. Oh, we're advancing all of this technology, blah 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 blah. So it's really just the whole vibe and what's going on will just paint the theme of the city.
just think about what can of worms does that open when you choose to get really obscure and really kind of out there with your world. So maybe adding in elements like, let's just say, for example, if you're running a classic high fantasy world and you throw this in there, that's going to open some eyes and raise some eyebrows of, hey, what's going on? What does this mean? There are technopath squids at the bottom of the ocean? What the hell? Yeah, like Mitch said, where did they come from? Are there more?
Mm-hmm. The
You know?
archmages are going to get together. The Council of the Magi is going to get together and be like, "What's going on down there? We need to solve this." And then if
Yeah.
it's a very low fantasy campaign, what are you talking about? We've never been to the bottom of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like nobody would know. And then every once in a while, one of them floats up to the surface, like in our world, where it's like, "Oh, new ancient creature from the ocean has resurfaced when it died."
Yeah, it's just one of those things of like when you get really, really obscure, you need to kind of make sure that it's not going to open up this can of worms of like, oh, can they travel to space? Is that where they came from? If they're technopaths, then what about that technology? How can the rest of the world use that technology if it were to get his hands on it? And then all of a sudden, because your players will run away with this stuff, they'll be like, oh, this technopath telepathy through technology exists. We got to integrate that upstairs, and it just becomes this whole thing. So you need to, and this isn't really pertaining to your question anymore, but this is a good kind of segue to go on. It's like, how do you fix a can of worms that you accidentally opened? In oh well, if you did this, then that means that, and you're like, well, actually, wait, no, I don't want this to be in my world. I don't want this to, for example, I had a time travel arc. I've mentioned it a couple times. I had an arc for time travel in my fantasy campaign, in my medieval fantasy campaign. It had to do with dunamancy, which is a critical role created thing, but one of our wizards was a dunamancy wizard. He had another consciousness living in his mind of someone who lived long ago. And essentially the arc concluded with him traveling back in time with his party in this contraption that was made, to rescue his daughter that was killed. It was a really cool thing, and it was something that the party didn't expect to be coming, because it's literally they walk into an ancient drow city and the guy goes, hey, yeah, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he goes, hey, we made a time machine and we need you to get in it and go save your daughter. And the party's like, yo, what? We're playing a D&D campaign in a medieval fantasy world and we're about to time travel? So I knew that that was an obscure thing. And going into it, I was like, okay, I need to make sure that this doesn't set the precedent that the party can use the time traveling machine whenever they want and open up this whole thing where, okay, oh man, we lost that fight. Let's go time travel back and win it instead. It's one of those things of like, it's the Pandora's box. You open it and you can't shut it.
Mhm.
But
And
I made sure. Sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
yeah, and going back to that point where it's like his characters were like, "Whoa, this is very out of the norm." Like we're in a D&D kind of high fantasy campaign, but like now we can have a time machine and it's almost turning a little sci-fi. I guess what I would be getting at is kind of like, I think in your question, we need to know more about your current campaign setting, cuz like okay, it's an underwater technopath alien squid civilization. Well, are you guys in space and you just visited a different planet and on a different planet that's made of water? That's going to feel a lot different than, oh, we're just low fantasy guys and we just stumbled upon this and we're level 3 and we're in Skyrim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think in order to like get the really big, the theme is going to feel a lot different depending on your campaign setting. So visiting that city as the Dragonborn at level 3 is going to feel a lot different than visiting that city as a high level wizard who's traveling the cosmos in one of those spaceships, the little space boats in what's it called? What's the
Spelljammer.
Spelljammer? Yeah, traveling a Spelljammer ship to another ship or to another planet. It's gonna be like, oh yeah, aliens. Yeah, of course. You know, the theme's gonna be way different. So I kind of your question. We need to know more. Then we can kind of flesh it out. But yeah. So just creating a theme is mainly about the idea of the city, how you want it to feel, music, lights, the main features of your city, what you want it to represent. That's how you get that. And then, sorry, Tom, not to interject you, but you're going with your statement.
Oh, I just want to wrap it up by saying it's important if you know you're opening a can of worms that you need to close that can of worms. So when we did this session and they went back in time and they had this climactic encounter and he saved his daughter's life, what that meant was he had essentially altered the timeline that they were in. He had altered the timeline that they were in, and things were going to be different when they got back there. He saved his daughter's life, which means, it's a whole campaign thing, but he saved his daughter's life, which means the daughter turns into a really powerful mage and was able to hold the city off from an attack of Dwergar, so the city was never destroyed and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, when they got back, they had altered the timeline enough to where the time machine didn't need to be built in the first place. So they got back, they went through the time machine back, and they just teleported into an empty room. The time machine wasn't there anymore. So it's like, okay, cool. We did it. We did that. This is even me talking from a meta perspective of like, you guys just time traveled. It's over though. Time machine's gone. Wipe your hands. And we're going to move on with our regular high fantasy campaign.
Yeah.
We got a little sci-fi, but the door has shut. And now we're back now we're back in our comfortable area of high fantasy. So if you're opening a can of worms, make sure you have the ability to close it, unless you want it to stay open. But that has nothing to do with the actual question that was asked. Yeah, just think about what is important, whether it's a physical thing, whether it's a kind of like a metaphysical thing, just an idea of what it means. That is how you can add personality. Just understanding what is important about it and how does that affect the rest of the area around it. Why should your players care about it?
Yeah, it just stems from a good idea from yourself. Like if you're a creative person, it's really just, like we said, the general theme of the city. And it has to just come from something you think is cool. Take inspiration from something. The theme of like, let's go to like downtown Tokyo. Like it's pretty it's current timeline, but it's pretty futuristic. It's pretty amazing. It's like, oh, like you're visiting the town, like the city. It's cool. It's awe-inspiring. And then you visit Seattle. It's like it's gloomy, it's rainy, like everyone feels like they hate each other. It's kind of, not to diss Seattle or anything, but it's
Fuck
kind of
you, Seattle.
it's kind of, even in real world, like the theme is different, the vibe's different. You go to Tokyo, it feels like a party when you're downtown. You go to Seattle, it's kind of like, oh, doom and gloom. Like, yeah, people are walking in the rain. Don't look at you. You know what I mean? So it's just base it off an idea, and then the theme will come.
Think about cultures. What is the culture like in each city? That's a huge thing, especially in real world. Certain cultures act completely differently, especially in an urban setting of like, that could influence a lot of how the city operates. If everyone's super friendly, or if people are a little bit more kept to themselves, if there is a certain way that everyone does something, even from driving on different sides of the road between America and Europe, that's a huge difference that people have to get used to. So think about the little things too that can really set it apart and give your players characters a little bit of culture shock. Be like, oh, nope, sorry, we don't say that here, we say this. Or no, sorry, we don't walk on this side of the street, we walk on that side of the street. Or
there's
it's polite to
yeah. Or there's like gems all around the city where if you touch it, you just teleport to another part of the city. That city's gonna feel and be thematically way different to a city where you have to like walk around everywhere.
Yeah. So think about that too. It might not be the whole city as a whole. It might not be one landmark. Might not even be the idea of a whole city. Just like, oh yeah, they just do things a little differently here, and that's going to drastically change how the monotony of the game works.
The theme will just sprout from your ideas, and make itself apparent. Like, and just make sure when you do something, like we've harped on this so much, just have a theme song or theme music you play off Spotify on your speaker. Do the
Oh yeah.
lights a certain way. Like if we're in the Underdark, my lights are purple or they're like a darker color. If we're in a bright city, they're going to be white or like a bright yellow. Or if they're in like a grim dark kind of Dark Souls-esque city, maybe the lights are red, and and you have like dark like background music playing. If they're in a cheerful Fey forest, you got fantasy forest music playing. You can hear like chimes and bells or whatever. The theme will fall into place if you just do all the other steps.
Set the atmosphere. The atmosphere is so is so important. It is so important. We've talked about this a little bit, like Mitch said on previous episodes, but like the music is important. The lighting is so important. Get a couple lamps with colored bulbs. Colored bulbs they are so cheap nowadays. You can get shitty ones for like $5 a pop. You can get nice ones for like $10 a pop. I use Casa lights, and I'm pretty sure a pack of 4 is like $30. And
Yeah.
those are nice light bulbs. You don't have to get the $100 Philips Hue light bulbs to have a good atmosphere. Buy some cheaper versions on Amazon or at Ace Hardware or whatever, and most of them will hook up to your phone nowadays. You can switch the lights on a whim. The lighting is super important for me. I'd say music is probably still more important to fill the
I would
silence,
agree.
but lighting is really important, especially when you're in those very intense areas, like Mitch said, the Underdark. That is such a switch up from your usual setting. Lights are dim, lights are purple. If I can have any ultraviolet stuff going on, 100%, I'm doing that. Like it just helps your characters get immersed into the world when their actual surroundings are mimicking what you're describing. So lighting and music, extremely important.
Mhm. And
And yeah,
lighting and music is way cheaper than having all that shit on your tabletop. It's just you just get the lights, you can dim the color. You don't have to buy 30 different sets of miniature sets to change the theme of where you're at. As long as you block it out on the table, you got the lights to match, you got the music to match. Yeah, it looks like just regular square tiles, but they're going to feel like they're in a cave.
true, true. You don't got to spend $1 million on terrain if you just have lights. Terrain's cool. I love terrain. I'll always be an advocate for terrain. But lights, you'll get a lot further with lights and music than you will with terrain, especially for a lot cheaper.
All right,
But we're kind of
Rafi,
like
well,
right at time.
yeah, Rafi, we hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
You
hope,
know.
hope that answers your question.
So make sure to leave some more. We love hearing from you. Seems like you're our biggest fan so far. So
Yeah, banger questions only. And Rafi is for fulfilling that request.
Rafi, you're a real one.
Good luck with your Squid City.
Yes. Don't get too close to the tentacles.
Oh yeah.
And if they're
But anyways.
if they're communicating through their mind, don't get mind controlled. That's all I'm saying. Watch yourself.
So yeah, I guess we can kind of wrap it up here. We're kind of perfectly at time right now. It's good to be back and better than ever. We'll keep doing this on a weekly basis. We might take some breaks here and there whenever we need to. But thanks for tuning in. We're happy to be sitting at our desks and talking D&D again. Of course, the frames around us, my little sage's Nook and Mitch's dwarven mine. These are created by Mitch himself. He's an extremely talented pixel artist. He can do character art. He can do frames. He can do all that stuff for the small price of $1 billion.
Yes.
Yeah. So be sure to give him a follow. Dual Wielder, right? Dual Wielder pixel artist.
Dual Wielder pixel artist. I gotta be honest, I'm slacking on that shit. I have not made. I have the Instagram page. I still haven't set it up. But I will do that this week. Also, now that the holidays are over, guys, we're gonna start kicking into overdrive with more D&D stuff going on. So we'll have a lot more to talk about. And it's gonna be fun. We got some cool stuff cooking up. I'm starting a new campaign soon. Or resuming an old campaign soon. That'll be fun. One of Tom's
Nice.
favorite characters in that campaign, so that'll be good. So we're gonna have plenty to talk about. Lots of games are starting in the near future. So
Yes, sir. D&D's wrapping back up. Be sure to, if you have any questions for the wisdom check, please comment them on the YouTube channel. You can comment them on Spotify, or just DM me or whatever. TikTok might be going away. We're still kind of in the gray area of that, so that sucks because it's my biggest platform. But either way, tune into the podcast. We'll be doing more stuff on YouTube, especially if TikTok goes away in America.
And
But
honestly, if TikTok goes away, that might mean more viewership on YouTube and stuff. People might be flocking to other sources of
I mean,
content.
that's the goal. TikTok was always kind of a temporary thing for
Mhm.
me. I wanted to always make a little bit more longer form content. But either way, give this a like, give it a follow, share it with your friends if you think you'd like it. I'm Tom, the Adventure Sage. This is Mitch, my brother, the Dual Wielder, and we'll see you next time.
Peace. We out. Yeah.